Hi, welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and I'm joined with Andy, and it's the new year, it's January, and things are rushing into 2022 straight off the bat, with all sorts of things going wrong. Boris Johnson's might resign. He's certainly pinned in a corner a little bit. Andy, how are you though? You've obviously got through Christmas all right?
Yeah, pretty kind of like usual, boring family Christmas type thing, really. Did you have any cheese and wine parties? Did you have any business meetings that were actually raved?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it? I won't deny it, I won't confirm it, but I'll just say that it was an official Christmas party, so everything could be, it was well within the limits. All the rules were being followed as far as I could break them.
Excellent. Maybe you need an inquiry for somebody to tell you whether you were at your own party.
Well, this is it. Yeah, I was absolutely so blitzed I can't remember.
And I'm quite happy at the moment because I'm coming off another communist censorship ban on Facebook. So that was a nice
30 days. Yeah, you're 30
days.
30
days again. Yeah. So just a very slow clap for social media. Congratulations for turning people's freedom of speech into North Korea. Thank you so much, social media, you complete and utter twats.
Well, actually, I was listening to the radio when I was driving back this evening about there's an investigation to do with this a Chinese spy in the House of Commons.
I saw that. Lee
vast amounts of money to do things to the Chinese. I mean, I can't think why. It's shocking.
Isn't it interesting as well how we were talking about a Wuhan lab leak and everyone was saying how that was such a crazy conspiracy theory, and now suddenly, ta-da! There we are in mainstream news. Wuhan lab leak. It
takes the mainstream media about sort of 2 years to kind of finally catch up with what we've been talking about all the time. It does,
yeah.
So anyway, we'll get to the task in hand and welcome our guest, the first guest of 2022. So with the magic of the internet, we shall flash our little pages and do all sorts of button pressing and welcome Kieran Woodhouse.
How do? You all right?
Yes.
Hey, Kieran,
hello. Welcome, Kieran. This is Andy. And of course, you know me, Neil, because you interviewed me last year on your own show. You have your own podcast, don't you?
I do, yeah. It's a bit of a hiatus at the moment, but yeah, I've got my own paranormal show, yeah.
Excellent. And how was your Christmas, Kieran?
It was great, just like yourself. I broke as many rules as possible. Just like last year, really, So
yeah,
I think really after the whole kind of Boris Johnson cheese and wine party, I think every time they have a COVID press briefing, what we need to do, everyone in the entire UK, is have a look at the clowns, what they're doing at their little pantomime clown show, listen and nod our heads and smile and go, very nice, and then completely ignore everything they say and just go back to normal. I think that's what we need to do. Just ignore everything they say and just break all the rules.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I've done the last 2 years. So.
But it's interesting. The people that are following the rules seem to be the ones that are suffering because, I mean, I won't mention names, but people that are very close that I know have had all their jabs and they've actually had the third ouchie Fauci, the booster one.
Are we allowed to say jabs? Are we going to get censored by communist North
Jibby jabby. I'm only stating the facts. They can fact check it if they want, but they can't fact check it because I'm not going to tell the names of the people. So that's going to be an awkward fact check. But they've had their jibby jabbies from and their ouchie Faucis, and they've had the boosters, and they're all self-isolating with COVID or something.
I could tell you this, Neil. I know personal people who are telling me they are unjibby jabbed, okay, and they've not got COVID yet, or they've had it quite lightly. And in their workplaces, their triple jibby jabbed people are all going down with COVID. Some of them quite seriously, some of them quite bad. They are getting COVID. They are getting wiped out with it. So and it's becoming more prevalent and more than one source that I'm being told. Very interesting.
And Kieran's nodding his head there. So
I've had the same here. There's a mixed bag of who's had it and who hasn't, and those that have are the ones that are off ill. But I must say the problem is that they play these silly games. Obviously we don't play these kind of games. Christmas for me is all about Monopoly and other types of games. So these are the kind of people that test themselves when they have a sniffle, or even when they don't actually, when they feel absolutely fine. they test themselves, and therefore they isolate. We won't test ourselves. So if we have a sniffle, we just get on with life, you know. So you're absolutely right, Neil. By complying, they're imprisoning themselves.
Yeah.
Which is stupid, really. But
I had this really long text from my dad this afternoon telling me, am I making provisions for this? And he's going through all the microbes of how many microbes on a teaspoon can fit on the thing. And, you know, and I said, well, hang on a minute. So-and-so, you know, within the family has done all these provisions and they've come down with something. So, you know, what's the point? It doesn't seem to, in fact, you know, I'm guessing the fact that I could either end up with something that's going to destroy my immune system, maybe temporarily, maybe permanently, don't know yet, don't really want to tempt it, but also get an enlarged heart. You know, lots of people would end up with I can't think what it's called. Myocarditis, yeah. So lots of very, very fit athletes seem to be taking longer rests on the football pitch than usual.
Yeah.
And in fact, you know, the system that we have here, the yellow card system. Now, not many people know that in the UK. That's a system where the government have put it out on the NHS website, the National Health Service website, for those in the UK or outside the UK. And the yellow card system is a thing where you can report adverse reactions, even deaths, to do with the ouchie vouchies and the COVID wovey jibby jabbies. And but not many people know about it. So, of course, it's not an accurate reflection of perhaps a truer picture of what's going on. But in America, theirs seems to be more detailed, their system. And I forget what's their system?
The VAERS.
The VAERS.
Yeah,
on the UK column, they showed this, where they showed like a 10-year picture of people, sportsmen, that might have suffered heart attacks or something whilst playing football, soccer, whatever it is, baseball, whatever it is out there. And it was a flat line for 10 years. And as soon as it got to 2021, the red spike shot up of people suffering all sorts of problems out on the sports field. I don't know why, of course.
And what do the mainstream media do? They say, oh, cold weather can create heart attacks in young people.
Yeah,
that's the little stories that they bring out.
Of course. Well, they got to explain all the previous cold weathers before. All the cold weathers that were before, but where it's all flatline, there's nothing happening.
Yeah, because we've never had cold weather before up until 2021.
Yeah, I mean, obviously polar bears drop down in cold weather and things like that, and Eskimos drop down in cold weather. You know, they're terrible, isn't it? Anyway, we
can you imagine the inventor? Can you imagine the inventor of the RMNA jibby jabby, the actual inventor of it, being kicked off social media for talking about his own invention? I mean, mandatory clap and thank. People need to join a group. It's a fantastic group on Facebook. If you're still on Facebook, if you haven't been censored, Kim Jong-un's dank meme storage facility. It is fantastic. It's a group of people that kind of imagine what it's like if North Korea ran Facebook, which is basically the whole of Facebook, really. But if North Korea ran Facebook and there's this thing called hashtag thank and hashtag mandatory clap and thank, where all you can do is just clap and smile like you're in North Korea. And that's all you can do. So all Robert Malone can do, the inventor of his own invention, getting kicked off Twitter, all he can do is clap and thank dear leader.
Oh, well, I'll have to look out for that one.
It's great. It's fantastic.
We'll get to the task in hand then, which is obviously talk about Kieran's paranormal interest. And Kieran, you mentioned you got your own podcast. What was the podcast you have been doing recently?
The podcast is called the Paranormal Paradigm Podcast.
Right. Okay.
Bit of a mouthful. So,
yeah. And where is that if people want to hear it?
On all kind of you get it on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube. I used to upload it to as well when it wasn't getting banned. So yeah, it's kind of, if you just search for it, you'll find it. I haven't done one now. It's one of those where the reason I'm doing this at work is because I've got a 2-year-old who's going to bed later and later, so it's more difficult to fit in time to record people. So I've decided to just give it a year or so break until I can get back into it. I did about 35 episodes.
Wow. Well, actually,
so you got banned on. What did you get banned off of, Kieran?
So I had a partner show to that called The Collective Conspiracy Show, and I had a 9/11 video banned for inciting violence.
Wow,
whatever that means. I had a couple of COVID's banned with Andrew Johnson. A couple of those got banned. Yeah, so I just stopped uploading to YouTube and used places
mandatory
like
clap and thank there as well.
yeah.
Excellent. Well, on the paranormal front then, so how did you get into all the paranormal thing? This is what we always ask people. What prompted your kind of, because, you know, people obviously have some sort of interest or something nudges them in that direction and it kind of expands. So what was it for you?
So for me, I'd always had an interest. You know, as a child, I used to watch a program called Strange But True, which
I used to love that with Michael Aspel.
That's it. Yeah. It's I've been rewatching it on YouTube. Quality's atrocious, but it kind of brings back memories. So I used to watch programs like that. Lived in a haunted house. We used to have we would have a child gate at the top of the stairs, and if my mum hadn't locked it, it would slam 3 times to tell her that she hadn't locked the child gate. Things like that would regularly happen. My mum would have 3 vases, a big, medium, and small, like a set, and she would put them in the living room. She'd have them like that, kind of big, medium, small on the fireplace. And her nan would always argue with her that she should style it out a bit and have one here and one over there. And we would go out and we would come back after her nan had died, and they would be exactly how her nan would want them. And I remember being like a 5 or 6 year old watching my mom shout at thin air. And of course, as a child, your mom shouts at you. So when she's shouting at something else, it kind of makes you wonder what's going on there. So growing up in a haunted house definitely obviously piqued my interest. But then you get older and things get in the way. You get a job, you get a girlfriend, you have to pay the bills. So you kind of forgot about it a little bit. And then I had a really up close UFO encounter, which kind of led to a string of synchronicities, which then almost forced me back into this world. And my passion really lies with UFOs and conspiracies, but somehow, and I don't know why, I've ended up in the paranormal side of things, and done the podcast, and I've still given my presentations, and I've written a couple of books about it. But it's strange because that's never really where I wanted to go. So it's kind of strange how that happens.
What was the UFO encounter? What happened there?
Yeah, I was going to say, go for it.
Yeah. So there's a place near me called Romsley, and it's kind of a country area, and it links Bromsgrove with Halesowen, and that's where I used to live in Halesowen. So myself and my brother were coming back from Bromsgrove. We'd just been rugby training. It was about 9:45 at night, so it's just gone dark, you know, kind of late spring, early summer. And as you go through Romsley, it parallels with the M5, and you can tell the M5 because you can hear the traffic, you can see the lights. But as we kind of carried on up this country lane, and there's a couple of pubs, it's quite a busy country lane. As we carried on up, normally the M5 disappears as it gets further away. But this light was quite persistent with us. And I remember pointing out to my brother, you know, what's this light kind of thing. And then as we got to the top, as you get to the top, you can see Birmingham, you can see for miles. And as we got to the top, this craft triangular pulled into view. And if I carried on at 30, 40 miles an hour, we would have overtaken this thing. It was about 1,000 feet away, about 1,000 feet up, roughly half the size, about the size of half a football pitch. It had 2 lights on the back of each corner, nothing in the middle, nothing at the front. And it was just silent. You know, you can hear a plane at 10,000 feet. We just couldn't hear a thing here. We sat there for about 3 minutes watching this thing just cruise past, and then eventually it disappeared behind some trees, and we carried on home. But my brother's not really into this, but we were both sat in the car crying, you know. So an hour before we were big macho rugby men, and now we're sat in the car crying like babies, and we don't know why. We've never been able to explain the crying, but we were living with our parents at the time. We got home, and I remember kind of walking in, still visibly shaken. And I'm so glad my brother was there, because if he wasn't there, I've got a feeling my mum and dad would have thought it was like the boy who cried wolf kind of thing. But the fact that my brother said, yeah, you know, I've just seen this thing as well, it really backed up the story. So it was fascinating. And I've never said it's aliens because I don't know. But it was certainly the definition of an unidentified flying object.
Wow. What shape was it? Could you make out?
It was like triangular.
Triangular.
So the crying thing, that's intriguing. Do you think, like, I mean, it almost sounds like there was an experience that happened prior to the crying that you're unaware of, like missing time or something.
So that, yeah, it's interesting you say that, because my brother actually said to me, and I was quite surprised, because he doesn't really know, it's not that he doesn't know about it, he just doesn't have an interest. And I remember him asking me while we were sat there, what's the time? And I remember saying to him, don't worry, the time's fine, because I knew exactly what he meant without, he didn't actually say that, but I knew what he meant. And no, so we did keep an eye on the time. I think we were just scared, because what was, you don't, if a lion's running at you, you know a lion's running at you, and you know how to react. You turn and you run away. This thing, we'd never seen anything like it. It was completely unexpected. Was it a threat? Was it not? We just didn't know. And I think the complete unknown of the situation was actually really quite scary. And I think we were crying through fear, I think.
Did you have missing time then?
No, absolutely none.
Oh, you did?
Was there any other reports in the vicinity, maybe the local paper or anything?
So the next day I did some research, and over the next week or so I kept an eye on local news. And it kind of was going over farmlands, and like I say, there's some houses, there's some country pubs. No one reported a thing. About 10 years previous to that, we'd had a thing called the Dudley Dorito, which was a triangular craft spotted going over the Dudley area. And every time I researched it, that's all I could find was this Dudley Dorito. So no one else had reported it. But me and my brother know exactly what we saw.
Wow. Very, very interesting, the fact that people are reporting more and more of these triangular craft now. I mean, there's speculation whether they're man-made secret space program or they're UFOs. And as you say, you didn't want to sort of say it's aliens. You kind of got an open mind, even on the UFO front, about what it could be.
Yeah, I mean, so the more research I've done into just the paranormal, because of course the paranormal does in my world includes things like aliens and UFOs. I believe that it's all interdimensional, and it is all the same. It is all one and the same experience, whether you're seeing a Bigfoot, whether you're seeing a UFO or an alien being or a spirit. It's all interdimensional. It's all one and the same.
Yeah, we're finding the same thing, aren't we, Neil? That people who have UFO experiences tend to have ghostly experiences, and vice versa, more and more.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know if you listen, Kieran, to any other podcasts, things like the Confessionals and things like that in America. Again, a lot of people are reporting exactly the same thing, especially with the Bigfoot experience. Bigfoots very, very often come along in terms of UFO experiences at the same time, or prior, or just after. It's very, very strange.
That's exactly what I found with my research into that. It's the way I describe it is I believe we live in a holographic universe, and I believe that we're consciousness trapped inside a body, a biological vessel. Therefore, we're trapped within a five-sense reality, and that prohibits us from seeing the whole world. So the human eyes, we can only see 99.95% of the light spectrum. It's what we call visible light. So that means there's 0.095%. So that means there's 99.95% of the world that we can't see. So even where we are now, me sitting in this room, there's 99.95% of this room that I can't see or interact with. And it's simply because it's out of my perceptive range. So does that mean there's nothing there? No, it means there's worlds there. There's whole dimensions there. There's frequencies around us that we can't interact with. And that's what I believe people like mediums and psychics, they can just tune into frequencies that we can't. So I use an analogy of a radio station. So if you're listening to Radio 1, it doesn't mean that Radio 2 is not there. You're just not tuning in with your brain in this example. The second you tune into Radio 2, Radio 1's still there, you're just not seeing it anymore. So when people say that they saw a Bigfoot or a UFO and it just disappeared before their eyes, or Bigfoot went behind the tree, but he didn't come out the other side, I would argue that he did come out the other side, but you just don't see it anymore. So for the briefest of moments, just like in your car, your radio will, it will balls up a little bit, and you might have two radio stations cross over for a little bit, and then it goes back and you just hear one again. I think that's what's happening when some people are seeing and experiencing these paranormal entities, that they're just tuning in, and for the briefest of moments, they can see what is always there, And then it fixes, rewires itself, and they go back to being trapped within this 5 sense reality again. So when you begin to look at it like this, it opens up so many possibilities as to, you know, for example, if you look at Bigfoot, why don't you ever find a body? Why can he just disappear in front of people? Why can he just kind of leave without a trace? Why is he so untraceable? Is it because that he's existing between worlds, almost between dimensions? How can aliens pull you through a solid roof in order to abduct you? How can they take you through a solid pane of glass when they lift you out of your bed? How can spirits walk through walls? How can spirits, you know, kind of float? So I think they're all existing in a block. We live in a block of flats, and we're all on different floors, and we can't ultimately interact with each other, but we know that we're all there almost on different levels. So that's kind of part of a theory that I've worked on over the years. And that's what leads my research, really.
And you're investigating a haunting house. You're making a documentary about it, aren't you?
Yeah. So there's a documentary. We're on course for the end of February, hopefully. It's difficult. There's myself and the guy who's kind of editing the film and the cameraman, essentially. You know, we've got full-time jobs and families, and we're trying to do all this as well. So it's quite difficult, but we're on track. So there was this family in Essex who have had a really bad time, actually, a really bad time. And we decided to just, you know, obviously ask their permission. Should we document it? And I've got a lot of evidence around that house.
Which town is it in Essex?
It's in Payton.
Payton, okay,
yeah. But, you know, the family are lovely, but they've kind of gone through hell, and still they still are, you know.
Is it an old house or a new house? Or?
No, so that the house is, the whole estate isn't exactly that old. We've obviously gone back and tried to see what was there before. It was just farmland before, just fields. The nearest building we could find was a Victorian workhouse, which wasn't really that near to where this house is. People had lived there before, not experienced anything. It all came on when one of the daughters fell into a grave. They were drunk in a churchyard. She fell into a grave. They then went back to her house, her and a few friends, and decided to light some candles and have a seance. And at this point, the electricity blew. This was about 2 a.m. The fuse box sparked and blew. That woke the family up, of course. So Lee, the dad, came downstairs and what the hell's going on? Called it a night, and that was that. 2 weeks later, Lee's at home on his own. He's on the phone to Kelly, the mum, and he has 3 loud bangs on the front door, very loud bangs. He describes it almost like you'd expect the police to be knocking on your door. So he goes to answer the door, and there's no one there. So he comes back, sits back down, carries on the conversation, and then has to end the call because he can hear someone upstairs. So he goes upstairs, and there'll be video footage of this in the documentary. But as he goes upstairs, he captures an imp-like shadow dart across the hallway and slam the bathroom door, pretty much in his face. At which point Lee it's almost like a horror film. So he stumbles back and trips over the things that are on the landing and tries to run away. And that was how it started. And we put up some motion sensor cameras in the house over the course of 6 months and captured some fantastic pieces of evidence, to be honest.
You got to wonder what the hell is going on with all of this, and you got to wonder, like, I think I'm not sure the falling into the grave triggered it, but I'm pretty sure the seance did trigger it. But you got to wonder, okay, so these things only happen when seances happen. What is a seance? It's basically an intention. It's an intention to communicate with the other side. So there must be some kind of free will barrier stopping this thing from happening all the time. So the reason you don't get, 90% of houses haunted with this kind of thing going on is because most people don't do seances. So as soon as you do a seance, it's like you're giving the green light for these to come in. So And these things, obviously, if they're negative, then they wouldn't give the flying monkey's ass about free will. They would just do it anyway, but they can't. They only seem to do it when there is free will. So that implies that there's some kind of either spiritual police force or spiritual kind of free will what do you call it? Not supporters, but enforcers is probably a better way of putting it. Some kind of enforcing force that's stopping these things from invading, people's houses willy-nilly 9 to 5 all day, every day. So I wonder what the hell is going on with that.
This, and I call it an energy. This energy is fascinating on so many levels because it actually mimics their voices. So there are times where Lee has been out, but he's called from upstairs. Kelly, come upstairs, and but he's not there. He's mimicked the barking of the dog. He's mimicked children's laughter. It's crazy what this energy has done. And it just tells me it's not human. And one thing I'm looking at the moment is I'm beginning to believe more and more that spirits actually aren't dead people. I don't think there is a thing as a dead, it's almost like I die and then I go and haunt a house, because why would a ghost decide to just hang out in a tunnel in the middle of nowhere on the off chance that it can say boo to someone, so there's so many plot holes in the general consensus of what the paranormal is. And so I've been looking into what I've called the collective consciousness. So kind of following on from what we were just speaking about, when a human dies and the energy is released from this biological vessel, because obviously you can't destroy energy, it gets released and it joins back up with what I've called the collective consciousness. And this energy exists all over the world, and we are tuning into this energy. And some people have an ability more than others, your mediums and your psychics. And when you wake up and you see your mum, who might have passed, she stood at the bottom of your bed, or you see a Bigfoot, or you see a UFO, I think you're tuning into the same point of energy, the same frequency, but you're manifesting this yourself. So if you want to see your dead mum, you will manifest this energy and see your dead mum. If the Virgin Mary only ever appears to people that want to see the Virgin Mary. I've never seen her. I'm not religious, and I probably won't see her. And therefore, I think these things are appearing to those that want them to appear, and they're being seen how these people want to see them. And the reason your mum can talk to you and say certain things that only your mum would know is because, of course, she does. It's collective consciousness. It knows everything there ever was and everything there ever will be. So it can play the part of your mum, but it could also play the part of somebody else's dad and somebody else's dead dog and a Bigfoot. So that's where I'm going with this, that actually there are no dead people. Unfortunately, this kind of gets me castrated within the paranormal field because, like I say, there's this general consensus of what the paranormal is, and heaven forbid you should question it. And that's why I've another reason I've taken a step back a little bit is because it's full of politics, as you know, same with the UFO world and all that stuff, and it's full of big egos and your TV stars and your TV wannabe stars and all this stuff. And I just kind of want to focus on my own research and do my own thing and answer my own questions. So many times I've answered questions publicly and it's not been very well received.
I would say don't give a monkey's ass what other people think. It's your mission, your journey, and the only thing that matters is the truth with a capital T, whatever that might be, and what other people's opinions are.
Again, I've my theories have changed over time. My energy dictates my evidence dictates my theories. A lot of people allow the theories to dictate their evidence. So if they have a theory, heaven forbid that a piece of evidence should come along to blow that out of the water. And if it does, they choose to ignore it because it doesn't fit with their theory and their way of what the paranormal is. And I don't think that's right. How many pieces of evidence are ignored by people who are in a much better position than myself to get this truth out there? It's ignored simply because it doesn't fit their narrative. And I think that's really wrong, but that's what happens.
Do you think this consciousness, super consciousness, whatever it may be, if it can masquerade as voices in someone's house, or it can emulate the dog or a child, or emulate your mum at the end of the bed, it can manipulate evidence to fool you anyway? Because obviously, if it's pretending it's your mum, it can come up with a evidence where it steers you down a path thinking, oh, I'm going to go with this theory that ghosts are stone tape theory, or it's all a mass projection consciousness that is literally controlling your perception. That's almost what it could be, maybe.
Well, if it can choose how it wants to be seen, or I think there are people that believe in the stone tape theory, and I don't think it can be dismissed. I don't think any theory can be dismissed. And as long as people are willing to acknowledge that theory, I think this consciousness is willing to reciprocate that want and that need. And I guess essentially what I'm trying to say is that within this holographic world where we manifest and create our own reality, we are manifesting and creating our own paranormal experiences, whatever they may be, depending on our own wants, needs, beliefs. At the time, if you're going through a troubled time like this particular family were, therefore they get a negative energy. What you put out is what you get back. So I think the long and short of my theory is we create our own paranormal experiences,
along with our general reality anyway.
I think you're right. Are you a fan of Bashar and Darryl Anka? Have you seen any of his stuff?
Yes.
So he and quite a few other kind of like channels and mediums and things are basically saying the universe is like a mirror. It reflects back, and I've heard this from a few different channels and things, that it basically reflects back you. Yeah. And Bashar says something that's really interesting, and I just can't shift this out of my mind. There's only one person in the room, and when you really think about that, it's quite mind-blowing that there's only one consciousness. We're actually talking to ourselves.
We're not even in the room anyway.
In fact, there is no ourselves. There's just like one consciousness.
That's it. It's this collective consciousness that I talk of. If you talk about how you perceive, because paranormal, the whole world is all about perception. It's all about. We could all have exactly the same experience and come away with completely different perception of what's just happened. Because it all depends on what your past experiences are. It all depends on what your wants are and what your needs are. And I've been stood next to someone in an investigation who are claiming they can see a shadow standing in a doorway, yet I can't see a single thing. Does that mean that they're lying or I'm lying? I don't think so. I think it just means that they're tuning into a frequency that at the time I'm not. That I think that's all it is. And there's an interesting piece of evidence that we caught around this, where we're in a place called Drakelow Tunnels, and we were, something had happened, and I'd gone into a separate room with a guy, and we were kind of just focusing on each other, and we heard a growl, very animalistic, very guttural. It wasn't a very nice noise. So when we went back next door, where a group of people had been conducting an EVP session, they'd captured someone saying hello. And it was exactly the same time that we'd caught the growl. Now, what I think has happened here is, with the human ears and the human perception, we had picked up a growl, and that's all it was. But with a recording device that can hear and pick up outside of our perceptive range, it actually picked up the word hello in quite a nice, innocent, tone. So we would have been forgiven for thinking this thing was evil, it was horrible, and that was our perception of it. But actually, on a different frequency, on a different level, it was just saying hello. And I think that was really good evidence in backing up what I'm trying to say with the whole frequency and things outside of our perceptive range, really.
That raises a hell of a lot of questions, because is it something that's actually good, but we're perceiving it as evil with the growl, or is it something evil where its true noise is the growl and it's pretending to be good?
Yeah, I think it's perception, though, isn't it? Because slightly off topic, but Hitler thought he was doing a good thing.
Well, this is it.
It's all about perception. It's all about our whole lives are about perception, and they're manipulated by outside forces, as we were talking about at the start of the show. They're manipulated and they're shaped, just like children. I think children can see these frequencies. I think they can see these energies, but we tell them throughout their childhood that they're being silly, they're being stupid, that it's just an imaginary friend, that it doesn't really exist. And we slowly shut down these possibilities and these channels until eventually they accept that as the norm, and they no longer see these energies and these entities, because that's what society wants them to see. And I think we do that to ourselves in a way.
It gets even weirder, because then we have to talk about things like tulpas and people kind of creating their own entities. Even some people saying they claim to see Slender Man, which is pure fiction. It is purely a fictional character in a comic book, Slender Man, and yet people are seeing these things. So if there's enough kind of like belief in things that we create, we actually, I mean, what does that say about human energy and the power of creation anyway? You know, that the fact that people can create these things out of nowhere purely by intent shows how powerful we really are, or could be. The potential is there.
Yeah, well, there's the other side where, again, outside forces are kind of manipulating what we see. So there's been so many studies put into the effect of EMF on the human body and the human perception. And there's that really famous story of a guy in America who was having his house rewired because the electrics were so bad. And during the rewiring, he felt like he was being sat on in the night. He couldn't breathe. There was someone in the room watching him. There was someone standing over him, kept feeling like he was being touched, was paranoid, was anxious. And as soon as the wiring had been done in the house and essentially the EMF had been fixed, the haunting disappeared and he was right as rain. And
Weird.
So when we're now being bombarded with 3G, 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, all this stuff that's around us, is it prohibiting what we can see? Is that part of what's keeping us trapped in this reality? Is it making us see things that we wouldn't normally see? You know, so you've got your own kind of your own limitations that you put on yourself and your own expectations, but you also have these outside forces that are limiting you from being able to see or react and interact with the world around you as you should be able to.
Another possible way of looking at it is, what if these electrical forces and EMF forces are actually kind of conduits or facilitators for paranormal things to exist as well? That's another possibility.
So when you talk about things existing in different frequencies, of course, these things are going to have an impact. So there was one experiment we did in a room where we had some EMF emitters. So we were basically flooding the room with high range frequencies, low range frequencies. We had a walkie-talkie. We were tuning into the different frequencies to see if we could pick something up at the time. And we didn't get a single thing for about 15, 20 minutes. Not a thing, you know, none of the equipment was reacting, anything. So we turned these emitters off and essentially emptied the room of these EMF. And within seconds, we heard footsteps in the room and the K2 meter shot straight up. And we had a REM pod at the same time, and that started to go absolutely crazy. And it's almost like, I imagine it like we were at a party and you want to get in the kitchen, but everyone's in there. And these spirits were trying to get into the room. They were trying to interact with us, but we were blocking them with all of these different frequency ranges that they couldn't get into. And as soon as we emptied it out, they were free to come in, and we heard these footsteps and they started to play with the toys and interact with us. And I always found that a really interesting experiment that kind of goes in line with what you were saying.
Reminds me a little bit of Robert Monroe, who wrote the book Journeys Out the Body. He was one of the pioneers of Journeys Out the Body. Well, not the pioneer, but one of the earlier pioneers of it. And he had done tests with laboratories where he would be asked to leave his body, but they actually placed him, or his physical body was surrounded by a Faraday cage, which shields against all sorts of electrical activity or something. Is my understanding from my basic science at school, which is not good. And he couldn't get out of his body. He got out of his body in the electrical Faraday cage, but he couldn't go beyond it, which is interesting. And years and years and years ago, I had a dream where I was, and I might have been astral traveling, as the term is, going out of my body whilst I was asleep, and this was my dream interpreting it. But in the dream, I was walking down the road and I was trying to fly, and I was trying to show someone that I could fly, but I couldn't fly beyond these cables above the house, which were electrical cables. And actually, in real life, there was electrical cables that used to go over the house. So I wondered if maybe I was trying to leave my body and this electrical cable was preventing me from going further out or something. So definitely there seems to be a connection between the spirit or soul or whatever you want to call it and electrical fields in some way.
I think if you go back in, ancient cultures, before we had electricity and all this kind of thing, they were much more in tune with this spiritual world or with this consciousness or however you want to call it. And technology has almost crushed it. So we now live in a society where it's no longer acceptable to to say that you have a spirit friend or to say that you can see spirits. So you've got that aspect of it as well, but you've also got this, I think, as you've just said there, Neil, we've got this kind of this electrical grid that's imprisoning us, and I think it's with the EMF and the, all the Wi-Fi and the 5G and all this stuff. I think it's oppressing our or suppressing our abilities, really, that we seem to have lost, and is evidenced in previous cultures.
Because they had ley lines, of course, and everything was about electrical grids. Into they wouldn't call it electricity, but energy grids.
Yeah, and lots of people have done dowsing around these stone circles and things like that, and picked up energies, which is very interesting. That's just using their own auric energy or human electricity energy or something like that, which is interesting. Getting back to the haunted house in Essex, do the people, or do you self-interpret it as a classic poltergeist case, or is it way beyond that?
So we, we've got photos of where they're about 10 now, but at the time they were like 7 or 8 year-old autistic twins, one boy and one girl, and we've got photos of them with scratches all over their back. We have recollections of the girls waking up being strangled, being held down in the bed, growls in their ear. We've caught growls on tape. So the definition of poltergeist, noisy spirit, it certainly is. We even have a video of Lee being punched by this thing.
Wow.
And you hear the sound of the thud as it connects with the side of his head. You hear that on the camera. So I think it goes beyond someone that likes to just open the drawer and slam a cupboard. But like I say, it's a chaotic house, in more ways than one. They've got the autistic children. They've got several more children. I know that the one child has just had a child now. So Lee and Kelly are grandparents now. And interestingly, when the baby was born is when it's calmed down.
That's weird.
So when there was happiness in their lives, it calmed down. And I told them, whenever you want to argue, whenever you want to fight, take it outside, take it away from the house. And there's a nice little clip from Lee, and he explains about how what they've done has actually helped their lives. Because they had people going around saging and throwing holy oil up the wall, which really annoyed them because they had to redecorate again because it was staying on paint. And give us 500 quid and we can get rid of this thing. And they never did. And I went down there and said, look, I'll tell you now, I can't get rid of this thing, but I can help you understand maybe what it is. I can help you live with it a little bit better. And I think they appreciated the honesty and that approach. And the fact that I wasn't there for my own personal gain. I was there to help them understand what was going on. And they live with it now. And sometimes worse than others. It kind of picks up in energy every now and then. But on the whole, it's because they're not paying it any attention and they're not feeding it with this energy, this negative energy or this fear. It's almost like it just can't be bothered anymore.
Strange.
Yeah. Because there seems to be a pattern that people talk about that a lot of poltergeist activity does seem to be associated with adolescent teenagers.
Yeah.
Whether it's their biology changing from children into adults, and it's that some sort of energy with that, and either they're manifesting it subconsciously themselves, or something is using that, harnessing that energy in some way to make a rattle and roll kind of thing going on. It reminds me a little bit, actually, a number of years ago, I was with my brother in Hemel Hempstead, and we were getting some petrol at a garage. And we pulled up at the garage and got some petrol. And he says, "Oh, see that flat up there?" And I went, "Yeah." He said, "Well, that house is that flat's poltergeist activity." And I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, I knew the couple." He said it was getting so bad that stuff was flying around in their house, in their flat. They just had to come out and sit in the car and look up at the window of the flat, which was, the light was on, and they could see stuff flying around by itself inside the flat. It was that bad.
I asked the question about the house with this family. It's a semi-detached house. The people next door have never had a thing. They've never had a draw. They've never had a draw slam. They've never had a penny thrown like this family have. How can it just be limited within these four walls? What in a block of flats? Why was it just limited to that one apartment? Why wasn't it above or below or next door?
Yeah.
Is it because those people next door and those people above don't know about it, and therefore they're not they're not creating it almost? I have to look at it like that, because that's kind of how I see it.
Do people next door or above, maybe, or neighbours, do they hear any noises and say what's going
on? There's been a couple of times where the whole house has shaken. All walls have shaken, things are falling off the cupboards and stuff. Again, we've got a really good video of they've got like a filing cabinet in their I don't know what you'd call it, a utility room, and all of the folders just fall on the floor. The cupboard just collapses on the floor. But no, next door, when they had the house shaking, when the walls were vibrating, next door didn't get a thing.
Crikey.
So strange.
Yeah. And when you're there, does it frighten yourself? I mean,
no, I mean, so I was in the house for about 30 seconds before I had a penny thrown off my head. And we captured that on tape as well. And they were getting so many pennies. They were getting New Zealand 10 pences. No one had ever been to New Zealand. So we told them to collect all of the change, all of the pennies. I did ask him to start throwing tenors, but he didn't oblige. And we collected all of the pennies in a jar, and I asked the family, count them. And every time you get more pennies thrown at you, count the jar, because it's got to be taking them from the jar. And the jar never diminished. They were always only adding. So where were the pennies coming from? We don't know. There were none in the house, yet they were manifesting from somewhere.
Sounds like classic apples to me.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've never been scared there. I've always been. We were conducting a spirit board in the living room, and this thing likes to hide. It doesn't like to kind of be in the same room as you when you're going after it. And we had 3 really loud footsteps on the landing, very squeaky landing, as clear as day. We had a camera at the top of the stairs, and after the 3 footsteps, we heard the door creak open, and we got the door creaking and opening on camera. So we ran upstairs. I'm quite a big guy, but I actually moved quite fast. So we ran upstairs after this thing, and there was nothing there, absolutely nothing. So we decided to stay up there for a while, and we split up because this thing was hiding. We split up and we all went into a room each. And I went into one of the teenagers' bedrooms and trying to set the scene for you here. So you walk into this bedroom and you go through the door, and the double bed's on your left. So it's not a very big room. So I closed the door behind me. On the back of the door it's like a shoe rack. You can kind of put some shoes into the holes. So I then went and sat on the bed. So I'm sat on the bed with the door now to my right at like a 90-degree angle. So the lights are off. I'm just sat there in the dark in silence. And all of a sudden something's hit me on the back quite sharply. So I've kind of jumped up and gone, oh, what was that? So I've turned the light on in the bedroom, and a shoe has lifted out of the rack, come round me, done a 180, and whacked me in the back. And it's now sitting in the middle of the bed. So I've kind of, I'm not going to lie, I ran out of the room and kind of got everyone. I was like, you've got to come and look at this. So showed them what had happened. And then one of the other guys volunteered to stay in the room. So he's now stood in the room facing the door. So he's facing the shoes. The bed is on his right, and the shoe is still on the bed. Within about a minute and a half, he comes running out of the room saying something's hit him in the back. So we go back into the room, and it was the shoe that was on the bed has now lifted, come towards him, done a 90-degree angle, and whacked him in the back. And he's now lying in the middle of the floor.
Was any of this recorded?
None of the shoes were. We didn't have cameras in there. The only thing I have on camera is me running out of the room, and then about 3 or 4 minutes later, Richard running out of the room. But while we're on the subject, the best piece of footage that we've had in that house is an item of clothing manifesting through the roof.
Wow.
So just like in the Enfield haunting, where there's that famous slipper that supposedly flew through the air, hit the bedroom floor, and then 2 policemen saw the slipper come through the roof and land in the living room. So they had motion sensor cameras in the house, and for about 3 months at one point, the family were sleeping downstairs in the living room because they were all too scared to sleep upstairs. And it was during this moment that it was about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And obviously the children had got their pajamas on downstairs. So they'd taken their onesies off or whatever it is they were wearing. And the camera upstairs, it's right up the back. So it's right against the wall. And we tried to replicate this by standing behind the camera and trying to throw something. But you can't do it without the camera picking you up because it's motion sensor. And secondly, you can't get enough behind it without it still seeing your arm because it's just a wall. So what happens is the camera kicks in just as the clothes appear, and they come through the roof and land on the landing floor. And it's about a 3 or 4 second clip, and that's it. But
if people wanted to find these clips, is there a link that you can give, or where would they?
Well, the documentary will be out soon, so they can see it there. But if anybody wants to see anything, they can, if they contact me on Facebook or if they email me at kieran.woodhouse@gmail.com. I'm not, again, one problem I have with the paranormal world is people that capture evidence and refuse to share it. I will share anything that I've got. I'm more than happy to do so, just so that I can get their feedback on it. I've actually had quite a lot of footage in the past debunked by sending it to people and having their opinion on it and showing me a different way of looking at it and realizing, oh yeah, I was wrong. Yeah, you're right about that. It's not paranormal. So I'm always happy to share.
The clothes that did come through the ceiling or the wall, did they belong to anyone in the house, or
so,
were they?
Yeah, so they were one of the child's onesies that they'd had downstairs when they went to bed.
It come up through the wall.
So it somehow appeared from downstairs through the upstairs ceiling and landing on the landing.
Wow, that's interesting. It reminds me again, some years ago, Philip Kinsella, who's one of the hosts on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, along with his brother Ronnie on the Twin Souls radio show on the network. He told me a story about this kid that they were investigating many years ago, probably about 12 years ago, maybe more, who was getting a lot of problems with poltergeist activity, so much so the parents couldn't cope with him. He had to sleep on a mattress with his grandparents, and there's nothing else in the house, simply because everything was getting broken. And one day, this kid was at school, and the grandparents had gone out to the shops, and they said, "What would you like us to buy you from the shops?" And he said, "Oh, I'd like a model boat, something like the Ark Royal or something like that, and with lots of grey Airfix paint to go with it, sort of thing, to paint it up." And anyway, the headmaster on the same day had called this kid in to give him a telling off about something in the headmaster's room. And whilst he's in there, I'm not sure if the kid had left the classroom or if it happened in front of the kid, but suddenly out of nowhere, this model Airfix paint, grey paint, materialised or something, fell out of the ceiling onto the headmaster with the lid off, and it got covered in grey paint.
Wow.
And that was the grey paint their grandparents were buying from the shops that very day. Gone out of their bag and ended up on the headmasters, like punishment or something. Weird.
But it's further evidence of our reality or supposed reality being messed with, isn't it? We see these items of clothing as solid. It's a solid item, yet it is somehow kind of dematerializing and then rematerializing somewhere else, almost like a beat me up Scotty type thing.
Yeah.
And you've got to wonder who and why.
Yeah, it's the biggest question, and I always start like my presentations and to groups. I always say, if you've come here for answers, then leave now. I don't have them, and there are so many people that pretend they've got the answers, or they say they've got the answers, but nobody has. We're all on this journey to try and
I like throwing theories out there, possible guesses, but that's all I can do.
That's all you can do, and you'll admit that. You say this is just a theory because I've got some evidence that backs it up, but at the same time, it's always fluid. We just don't know.
Yeah. Well, even that Michikaku guy, he's like a physicist, a Japanese-American physicist, theoretical physicist. He talks about the fact that there's 11 dimensions or something. And he says, we know there's 11 dimensions. When it starts getting to more than that, they become unstable. I'm not quite sure what he means by that. So in other words, there seems to be other dimensions or worlds or something interacting with us that, like you say, we can't see. So science is kind of backing it up in a way, but we call it a different name, I suppose. You know.
Well, science is slowly catching up because it's now kind of accepted within scientific worlds that we're potentially living in a simulated reality. You know, that's becoming spoke about more and more within the scientific circle. So they're kind of catching up now. Like you said, the media take a couple of years to catch up with conspiracy theories, and that's how I think eventually they will catch up. But by that point, we might be even further, you know, down the road with theories. It's interesting how you talk about the time there and dimensions, because it's very possible that time isn't linear, and time is, you know, everything that has ever happened and will happen is all happening now.
And covered this, we know this one.
Yeah. So there's another theory I've been kind of just looking at, really dipping my toe into, and it's that of when you see a spirit again, it's not a dead person, you're just having some kind of time slip, and you're actually seeing them living their life there and then. The only thing that stops me going really further with that theory is you don't have many. There are some, but you don't have many people having time slips into the future.
Yeah.
So, you know, you don't see some kind of futuristic guy walking through your living room. It's always someone from the past. But it's certainly a theory worth looking at. I interviewed a guy once who he'd gone to bed. It was about 9:30 on an evening. He was lying in bed reading his book. He lived alone, and he heard a crashing in his bathroom, like someone going through his cupboards. So very cautiously, he's approached his bathroom and just nudged the door open. And he sees himself cleaning his teeth, and kind of just backed away, went to bed, and tried to forget about it. But what's happening there? You know, is he somehow slipped a time, and he's now so again? You hear bangs, you hear door closes in your house. Does that mean that it's just you from the day before, or the next day, and that's what you're hearing?
Again, that reminds me of something from the Strange and True show. You might remember it. This one, it was this security guard that was patrolling this industrial estate or a building or something in his vehicle, driving around the roads of this place. And he said he saw a vehicle coming towards his, which was the same type of vehicle as it. So he thought, who's that? Yeah. I'll tell it for the audience. And he looks at this vehicle and thinks, well, who's that then? And as he's getting closer, he notices the guy's looking at him, and he realizes they both look at each other. And as they pass each other, they're looking at each other, and they're the same person.
Yeah.
That was a real freak out. Yeah. Crikey. He should have got double pay for that night shift, at least. Right, we're coming to the end now, Kieran. So this film of yours, what's the title and where can we watch it?
The title has yet to be decided. My cameraman editor guy keeps most days I get a message saying, "What's the title? What's the title?" and I don't know. It's thinking of titles isn't my forte. But we're looking at getting it out, like I say, the end of February, really. And when it does come out, it will just be put on places like YouTube and things like that. And obviously I'll try and publish it on a few people's websites that I know. And then I'll do a round of promoting, coming onto shows like yourself, like I have done for my books. And I'll just try and promote it as much as possible. I'm not in it kind of for the hits. I'm in it because I want the family to get a message out. And that is, they're trying to show people that they can live with this kind of activity, and how they feel like it can be dealt with, and what not to do and what to do in these kind of situations. So it was really that it was half me asking if I could do it, and it was half the family asking me to do it to get a message out. So that's the aim of it. So give me a month or so, and hopefully it's going to be out. And I'll let you all know where it can be found.
Okay.
Call it Weird Shit Happens.
Weird shit happens.
Yeah.
Weird shit in Essex. What's the books you're writing?
So I've got two currently. So there's an introduction to paranormal investigation. So that was written because I was getting sick and tired of what I've dubbed the most haunted effect. And this is where I was having people come to investigations, literally walking out after half hour because nothing had happened. They were expecting, possessions and things to be flying off the shelf. And So I wrote it as kind of a dummy's guide to ghost hunting. So each chapter is on a different piece of equipment with my own thoughts behind it, whether it's good or not, and evidence to back that up. There's a few stories in between it as well. And then my second book is just a natural progression to that, which is experiences of a paranormal investigator. So if these people had gone out and started to investigate, they're now going to start having experiences, and they might want to know what they are and how to deal with them. So I've broken that down into almost like the you can have like a C1 up to 7 in alien interactions. I've kind of just broken it down into 6. So there's visual, audible, physical, interference, and some of them cross over, but I've tried to split it as best as I can. Again, with stories in each one, experiences, and theories around why they can be happening. And I'm currently about 1 page into my 3rd book. Very slow going. And this is going to be called Theories of a Paranormal Investigator. So things like we've spoken about tonight, hopefully written down in a bit more detail and slightly more fleshed out. I can't give you a time on that. I can't give you.
It's already been written according to our theories.
Yeah, I just need to tap into the future and
yeah. So how can people find you if they want to get hold of you to maybe tell you a ghost story or two?
So I'm on Facebook. I always ask people to add me on Facebook. However, as we spoke about at the top of the show, the paranormal world, you guys as well, you're outliers in regards to the COVID thing. You know, I've been kicked off paranormal investigations because I don't agree with the COVID narrative. So we're a rare breed. So I try not to mix the two. But if anybody adds me on Facebook, just be prepared that I do post a lot of controversial things. I do post a lot about conspiracy theories or conspiracy facts, as they are now. But you can add me on Facebook, Kieran Woodhouse, or you can contact me at kieran.woodhouse@gmail.com. I'm always happy to send you any pieces of evidence I've got. Or if you want me to come and I can come and investigate your property or
and you do talks as well, don't you?
I do talks, yeah. So I'm not quite sure when this is going to go out, but on the 18th of is it the 18th? Yeah, on the 18th of January, I'm talking at Truth Juice in Birmingham, and I've got a few more lined up throughout the year. So again, just keep an eye on it for that.
I suppose going back to the COVID thing and the hauntings and that, at least these ghosts, because they're full sheets, they got the whole mask thing built in, so they're following guidelines.
There was the one comment I made on the one investigation where I ended up leaving early because I was basically made just to feel uncomfortable. They weren't getting much activity, and I just pointed out maybe they were socially distancing, and they didn't like the people that organised it didn't like that. It's a shame. I don't get it because, again, we're all into the UFOs, and one thing I don't understand is how people who rally against the government because they've spent decades lying to them about the existence of aliens and UFO crafts and all this, and there's been a huge cover up, and the government are liars. And they censor material and they edit material to suit their agenda. But with regards to COVID, they're telling you the truth.
Well, this is
it. Yeah.
And I don't get how you can, like once bitten, twice shy. If a friend lies to you or a partner cheats on you, you find it difficult to trust them again. Well, if the government are lying about one thing, why wouldn't they lie about another?
Cognitive dissonance.
Precisely.
Is your profile a picture of you with a backpack and a small child on a red toadstool? Is that you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I found it. And interestingly, your little profile thing, we're talking about North Korea and clap and thank. You've got what looks like a wedding with somebody holding up a clap sign. So you're already there with the clap and thank.
That's my. Yeah, that was my. Basically, I was scared that people at my wedding weren't going to laugh or clap at my speech. So I had my 2 best men held up signs to tell them to clap and laugh.
The old warm-up people.
That was it.
Yeah. And it obviously worked. Excellent. All right, but thank you very, very much, Kieran, for joining us on the Paranormal Peep Show, the first guest of 2022. Although I should say we do have another guest in a second, and that's Ben Emlyn-Jones, who sadly lost one of his podcasting colleagues this year. So we'll be joining Ben in a second to hear about that. But for the time being, thanks very much indeed, Kieran, for joining us once again. And we wish you well with your documentary and your forthcoming book. And get off that first page and get to the second page. And Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Cheers, Kieran. Thank you.
Well, here we are with Ben Emlyn-Jones. Welcome back to our Paranormal Peep Show, Ben. How are you?
Oh, thanks. I'm a bit sad, Neil. You know, we're going to talk about a rather a tragic update in our community, but otherwise I'm okay. Thanks.
Good, good. Well, yeah, I understand it is a sad moment in the history of podcasting because your longtime podcasting buddy, who you regularly did shows with, Kev Baker from Scotland, has passed away. So we're very sorry to hear that. What's the details? What actually happened?
It was quite sudden, actually. I mean, I knew he was ill. He's been in and out of hospital for the last two years or so. Hasn't worked at all. He's just been on the sick, you know. But he went into hospital before Christmas, and he posted a couple of times saying he hoped to be out by Christmas. Indeed, he was. He came out on Christmas Eve. Then I thought, that's great. You know, he's great. I mean, I didn't know if he was going to get better or not. Then on the 2nd of January, a word, you know, it started as rumours, but it was very quickly confirmed that indeed his wife actually sent me a message on Skype that he'd passed away at about 7:20 p.m. And he was only 45 years old, which is pretty young. I was stunned. I really was, because, like I said, I didn't realise he was so bad that we would have to prepare for him dying. It's not like Ian R. Crane. Ian R. Crane, I knew he was going to die. I mean, he did say he was going to have an operation, and then, of course, he did die a few months later, and it wasn't unexpected when that happened. With Kev, it was out of the blue. I mean, I knew it was sort of at the back of my mind as a possibility, but it was completely out of the blue. And what's more, this seems to be the latest in a run of bereavements that we've had to suffer. I mentioned Ian R. Crane. We've also lost, of course, Gareth Davis and Shirley Bolstock more recently, the psychic medium who channeled Paul McCartney. It's been painful to lose Kev, because I was close to Kev. We did a lot of shows together, like with Gareth Davis. I did many programs with him, 78 altogether, apparently, since 2015. That's quite a lot. And he would invite me onto his show, the Kev Baker Show on Truth Frequency Radio, once a month. I started off just I was just a one-off at first, because I was on it was either the Enemy Within with Thomas Barnes, or it was the Christopher Everard show on TFR. I can't remember which one it was, but I'd been on both of those. And Kev listened, and he thought I'd be a good guest. So he brought me on once, and basically he was so pleased. He was so impressed with me. He invited me back the following month, and I have been one of his regular guests. He has recurring guests, and I've been one of them. And I very much look forward to the shows we did together. I very much enjoyed them. He's a likeable Scottish chap, very knowledgeable, very passionate about the subject he covers, which is the same that we do: UFOs, paranormal, government cover-ups, various kinds. And he's going to be sadly missed. His shows, luckily, there is an archive of his shows on TFR, but also he had his own YouTube channel as well and Discord server. So he made copies of his own material for his own followers on there. And they're still available for people to enjoy. So anyone can go back and they can listen to them when I watch them whenever they like. Some of them are like videos. He was very good with as a graphic designer. He created great illustrations, great thumbnails, and he had a good studio set up on OBS. So it was always fun to be on a show with him. It's a sad thing. I actually had to. Oh, he'd already booked me to be on January the 18th with him. That's next Tuesday. And I had to cross it out in my diary, and that was very sad. It's little things like that often get to me, I find. You know,
sometimes it's the small things that makes the biggest emotional dents in you, isn't it?
Yeah. What did he actually pass from, Ben? What was the condition?
I probably shouldn't say, actually. It's probably not a good idea to say publicly. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do know.
Was it COVID or not COVID?
I believe it's not COVID related. No, I believe it's not. I can say that much. But it was. He'd had a long-term health condition to do with his lungs for the last couple of years. But I did think, well, maybe one day he's going to get over it. You know, I mean, I thought at least he'd carry on as he was. I didn't think it was fatal. But
so he was only how old? 45.
45. Which is
45. Goodness me.
Yeah.
That was What a shocking thing. And as you mentioned, you lost your friend Gareth as well from the other show that you took part in, which was
Mindset Podcast. Yeah, that's just a few months ago.
Yeah,
just a few months ago, Gareth died.
And that was totally unexpected, wasn't it?
Yeah. And he was a guy I spoke to. I did a show with once a week. He's very, very regular. I'll be doing a tribute show to Kev on my own station. I mean, I did actually interview Kev once on my show as well, which is great. I'm glad I got that done, and I'll be playing my interview with him. Not just yet, probably in a couple of weeks. It's a bit too soon. But,
and then you actually ended up meeting him at the Scottish Paranormal Conference, didn't you?
I met him once, yes, in 2016 at the Scottish UFO and Paranormal Conference. He was there, and I did get a chance to meet him along with several other people, and it's the only time we ever met. It was really, and I met his co-host Johnny Whistles, who gave me a place to stay as well, which is nice.
Wow. Johnny Whistles.
Yeah, his name. That's his radio, but that's his real name. That's not his real name. That's what he calls himself. And so it was great to see those guys, and we just hang out, and and I felt. I did film it, actually. If you want to see the video, it's actually on my channel.
I will check
it out.
Yeah.
It's simply called the Scottish UFO and Paranormal Conference. It was in June 2016. Yeah, it was a good conference, and I got to meet those guys for the first and only time I met Kev.
Did they cover Loch Ness? They must have at some point.
Oh, yes.
Kev, what's their view on that?
Kev's very, very positive about it. He actually comes from Inverness. And was familiar. He grew up with it, basically. He knew all about it from a young age, living so close to it. He often visited the loch.
Was that the thing that maybe first got him into the paranormal, the Loch Ness Monster being so close into that area?
It could be, because Malcolm Robinson was the same. He developed an interest in everything strange from the legend of Nessie. And the first things he did in the paranormal world when he was young was going trying to spot Nessie in the loch, and Kev was pretty much the same, I think. And then, of course, they both went into other areas from that, the UFOs, ghosts, and things like that. So, it's
What was Kev's favourite? Did he have a particular favourite paranormal subject that he was always put to the top of his list as far as researching or investigating?
I think believe it or not, the thing he really had a fascination for was quantum computers. And the things associated with them, which is some of which I'm not sure, but they involve things such as precognition, time travel, and things like that. That was, I think, a particular interest of him, and he had a couple of guests which he brought back a few times specifically about that subject. He did a program that was primarily an American station. I mean, most of the other hosts are American, and he did his show. But he did a show. His show started at 10 p.m. Glasgow time, but he sometimes had to adjust it because to do with the changing of the clocks in the United States.
So he worked for an American broadcasting podcasting show, and it went out live.
Yeah,
wow.
It's mostly American. It's based in the United States, but there's hosts from other countries as well.
So he'll be sorely missed by his American fans, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I'm hoping that TFO will make his archive freely available. I mean, there is a paywall actually for their archive, but though a lot of Kev's material is also on YouTube. I don't know. I don't know what they're planning to do with his catalog. I'm hoping they'll just make it free. Now he's gone. I hope so.
Yeah. Did he ever talk about things like life after death and ghosts and spirits or anything like that? I mean, he must have presumably a strong belief in all that as well then.
Like most people who are involved in this subject, I mean, he was interested in near-death experiences, after-death studies, psychic communication and things like that. And he had a very positive idea of survivalism, actually. He had a very positive survivalist belief. So... I share that.
Any pact with anyone to say, like, when I eventually go over, I'm going to come back and say this or do this or visit?
I would have liked to have. I mean, if he told me, if he'd asked me if he wanted to do something like that, I'd have gone along with it. I'd have agreed to it, because I know some people have done that. Because he had a positive belief in continuation of consciousness. I know other people who know they're terminally ill will arrange experiments. I know Harry Houdini did this. who's famous for being a skeptic, but it appears that even he did maintain a possibility. He said he maintained the possibility that he was wrong and there was an afterlife. And he did arrange an experiment with his wife. It's an interesting story behind that, actually, because all the literature today claims that Bess, his wife, never received a message from him. Yet in the Reader's Digest Paranormal Encyclopedia of 1983, it's a long story how I got hold of that. Completely accidental. It states that Bess actually did receive a coded message from Harry on the other side. Yeah. But so
what was the message that she got?
I can't remember. I wrote an article about it years ago. It's on my blog, on the main Hapanmo blog. I'll send you the links.
It was subscribe to Reader's Digest.
Probably that's where they published it. But Kev, so I mean, but even leaving aside things such as actual properly controlled experiments, with sealed envelopes and things. Spirits actually, I found that can actually, when they do come back, they often do give specific information to their sitters that they will kind of identify them. It's the sort of thing that someone couldn't make up. I often have stories like that. People tell me there's no way they could have known that. There's no way they could have made that up. Things like that.
Yeah. I would have thought that Kev, being a total paranormal podcast host, he would not turn down the opportunity to come back. If someone on the other side says, look, we can get you to get a message through to your wife or someone that you know, he would presumably be all up for that, because I suppose, from that point of view of wherever he is, he would want to let them know that he's actually okay. And that seems to be the overreaching urge of a lot of people on the other side to come back. Otherwise, if you wouldn't get any messages from the afterlife, if there was no sort of desire to come back and relate to people.
Yeah, I suspect if he wants to do that, obviously he will contact those closest to him first, his wife, parents, son. He'll contact them, he'll approach them first. But if he wants to make contact with me or anyone else, I'd love to hear from him. I said that about Gareth as well. And Ian R. Crane, if that's the case. I do.
Yeah. I'm sure these people will. They've just got to be provided with the right opportunity to do so. And with the way things have been going with lockdowns and things like that, you're not getting. I mean, Andy, you could probably enlighten us on this, but you haven't been able to have the opportunity to do your events of the past couple of years. You've only literally just started to get back into them, haven't you?
I've run my events when lockdown was lifted. And even when we had the whole tier thing of being outside, we did manage. So there were some counties where we could be inside, and other counties where we couldn't be inside. So this whole tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 thing. This is going back kind of like year 2020, wasn't it? So there was, I think it was Essex ones. We had to be outside, so we were in the freezing cold. And some of the Hertfordshire ones we could actually be inside, depending on what tier we were in. And this Halloween was quite busy for us. Christmas period then kind of like dipped a little bit because of the whole Omicron situation. January is a write-off for us, so we're heading more towards February and March now. But we're getting quite booked up for February and March. Cross fingers.
Hopefully it doesn't all end in tears. Yeah.
Cheese and wine parties.
I'm hoping that Shirley Bolstock is the person I think most likely to find an avenue to come back, because she not only was a trained psychic herself, she a very gifted one. She is working closely with other people who also, she's part of this community it's basically channeling messages from the real Paul McCartney.
Now, this is a lady I haven't heard of, or even channeling of Paul McCartney. So, can you enlighten us on that one?
Yeah, she was a lady I knew who worked with two ladies, and I've written books about Paul McCartney, and they brought her in because they wanted to contact the real Paul on the other side. I mean, if you're unfamiliar with this, the man we today call Paul McCartney is not the real Paul McCartney. His name is William Shepherd. He's not Paul McCartney. He's been playing the role of Paul McCartney since either September or November of 1966. We're not sure which. It's sometime between that time he took over the role of Paul. Paul sadly was killed in a car crash. It's a long story, a very long story.
But, even Ringo Starr said that, didn't he? Am I right
They've
in
all
that
given
case?
hints. They've all given hints about what they were going to say. Jean, I think, was the one that was most hurt. He was the one closest to Paul. I mean, some people claim that he was killed because he was going to blow the whistle. I don't know, because that was more than 10 years after the Beatles split up. But I'm not sure, but it's possible.
Let's have a look.
So this lady claimed to channel him in some way, and did she do a voice, or was it just literally providing information or something?
It was just like standard clairvoyance. I mean, she wasn't a physical medium. She didn't do transfiguration or manifestation or any of those sorts of things. But she did provide channeling, which has been a part of the research project of Anne Walsh and Mary Ann Howard, who they've now written 2 books about Paul. I've interviewed them as well. There's a lot of the factual evidence is gathered by Nick Collestrom's book. I can't remember what it's called now.
I mean, was it accurate? I mean, the thing is, when you're channeling Paul McCartney or giving information, you presumably got to have people in the room to be able to verify it, or is it literally just giving wisdom from Paul McCartney?
I can't remember. I don't have all the details, I'm afraid.
I
can't remember. But surely
it's quite controversial, though.
Yes, not everyone goes along with it. Funnily enough, Gareth Davis never believed it.
Well, I'd be interested. Obviously, she's now passed on, so I suppose I'd have to rely on archival material of her, listening to her and things like that.
I've interviewed her a few times. I've interviewed her.
I don't know enough about the early life of Paul McCartney to sort of say yay or nay to it, really. I suppose I would view it with an open mind and an interest, but I mean, I just don't know what to make of that one, really, to be honest. I don't know the facts. It's
just she was a very nice lady, and I didn't know her well. I never met her. She lived a long way away from me, but she did give me a reading once, which was really quite interesting. And she did numerology and things like that. And when she died, I didn't realize that she was ill. She had been ill for a while, actually. I didn't realize how ill she'd been.
And again, so she died this year or last year?
This year.
This year as well.
She died, I think, in November.
Wow. Okay.
So it's made me feel uncomfortable. It's sad. I mean, I lose these people. I mean, some of them I'm really close to, and I lose these people, and I'm like, they're the people who are like I think I interact with the most. I mean, I don't talk to my family about these sorts of things, and when they just disappear, when they just go from my life, it's sad, and I feel I just feel like there's a lot of them. I said there's a run of bereavements at the moment, and I just hope it ends now. I hope that's it. I don't know how much longer I can take this. I don't know. I really
the band Rush. I always followed the band Rush, and Neil Peart, the drummer, wrote the lyrics for the band, and he actually died a couple of years ago, which was much to the upset of the fans of Rush, certainly me as well. Yeah. But one of the songs was about suddenly dying, and I remember one of the lyrics was "Suddenly you were gone from all the lives you left your mark upon," and I thought it was really poignant that's an absolute. These people, they do make an impact on many lives, and perhaps those individuals don't even realize it themselves, how many kind of tendrils of their lives that they extend outwards and affect people in different ways, And I think with Kev Baker, getting back to Kev Baker, certainly through his podcast, he's certainly reached out to many, many people and maybe educated many people along with yourself and other guests and things like that. And hopefully entertain people and educated people as well. And it is such a sad thing that we did lose him, really.
Yeah. Yes, his channel was really popular. I mean, he had tens of thousands of listeners. I mean, it was a major station. And he was... and there's been... The station and Facebook has been inundated with messages. I've been inundated with comments because I made a little tribute video to him. I was inundated with comments, paying tribute to Kev. It really was.
How will you honour him? Is there any plans for you to do anything special?
I'm going to do a tribute to her Panwo show, maybe next week, maybe the week after. I'm not sure, and also a live stream. I'd like to do a live stream to pay my respect to him. Thanks.
We'll be watching. Certainly, I'll be. I always try and tune into your live streams as well.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Any final words, Andy?
Well, I was briefly trying to look for the whole Ringo Starr thing. This is either a Mandela effect, or it's I don't know. Maybe it got buried or something. But I can't find where there was a news article. I swear there was a news article with Ringo Starr saying that Paul McCartney isn't the real Paul McCartney. But I had a trawl and I can't find it. Either it's been buried or it's a Mandela effect in another parallel universe. But,
well, Mandela effects can happen, But also, it wouldn't surprise me if they just got rid of it, because I mean, of course, Ringo was he's dead now. He had a very strange experience where his house was broken into and he had to confront an intruder. I think you're talking about George Harrison. Sorry, George Harrison. Yeah. Of course, Ringo's still alive. What am I talking about? Yeah. But Ringo's been very quiet lately. He works behind the scenes at the moment.
I thought you said he's working behind the bar.
Maybe he does that too. As the only surviving Beatle, he's the only one left, and maybe he just wants to keep his head down now.
Well, before we go, we'll just do a little PS on this, and that's to do with our little last episode talking about anomalies on the Moon and Mars. And I discovered today that Chinese rover did managed to traverse over to this strange square Pizza Hut on the Moon. And according to the latest pictures, it's just a rock, and it was just all the shadows and things like that. But I sent it to Andy today to have a look at, and we're not convinced ourselves, because the rocks look totally different. The further away one looks totally different from the close-up.
The scale of it. I mean, I know kind of like scale can be quite skewed, especially on the Moon. But from a distance, it looked like a huge object.
Yes.
And when they showed the object of what they said it was, it looks like a small rock, and it just doesn't quite make sense.
Considering it's meant to be like 250 feet away or something like that.
Doesn't make sense.
It wouldn't be the size of a shed or something,
If it was 250 feet away, it wouldn't be that small, because you could see it's not a terribly big rock. It's only about the size of the rover itself, which is like it's much smaller than a car.
It's again similar to the idea of the face on Mars. The face on Mars looked great, and then when they go around for another orbit, maybe a year or two later, it's suddenly just revealed to be a mountain or something.
But then it turns out that they deliberately made it look bad. NASA. They just basically engineered the actual raw data to create a bad image of it.
Yeah, which can be done with computer software these days. Yeah,
it shows that they're covering it up. They don't want it to look too human-like.
Well, as I say, watch this space. Anyway, thank you very much, Ben, for coming in and
you're welcome.
About the late Kev Baker, and condolences to his family and his fans, and condolences to you being his friend as well and co-host on his show.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
All right.
Rest in peace, Kev.
Take care.
So that was Ben there talking about the late Kev Baker, who sadly lost his life and is now in the spirit world or somewhere else. We don't know. But thanks very much indeed for Ben for chatting to us. Any final thoughts, Andy?
No, I think it's been a really fascinating little podcast this has. And hopefully we'll get Kieran back on board and have another chat later on.
Yeah, certainly love to see some more footage and further investigations on that. Anyway, thank you very much indeed to yourselves for joining Andy and I on the Paranormal Peep Show, the first episode of 2022. Join us next month, where we'll be delving deep into the paranormal again. Who we will be talking to, we haven't yet decided, but find out then. Take care. Bye-bye.
See you later.